All right. Good morning, everyone. Today is Tuesday, August 24th, pre-market planning. So just to take a quick look at the market yesterday, right? So SPY being SPY, I think last Thursday was the big gap down day where it just started getting bought up, and Friday was the day that it got gap down. Yesterday had some nice sort of like follow through, right? Yesterday was Monday. Yeah, Monday. So yeah, Thursday, Friday, Monday, right? So from Thursday on, it had like a nice, kind of getting bought up, sort of like by the dip, right? So just as we thought that there was going to be some weakness where the market might potentially have some correction, it had a minor correction and then started rebounding, right? So yesterday had a nice day where it just kept going straight up, right? So after, let's say, like a week, I think like we were having some choppiness for about a week, right, during this stage where it was just kind of like choppy, and then started selling off. And so last week was a bit choppy, and then it got bought up essentially, right? So yeah, just as we had some weakness kind of come in, the market started showing some strength, right? So it started like rebounding, and this essentially is what drove a lot of I guess large cap plays to also uh, have a rebound, sort of like push day yesterday, right? Like we saw a lot of names like Nvidia, AMD, you name it, right? Any large cap that you saw, majority of it was on like a pretty good upside move, like Tesla and so forth, right? So yesterday market was definitely showing some strength, right? Made on new all-time highs, 448.23s, right? And this in pre-market, as I was planning this early on, it was kind of like hovering around that uh, all-time highs area as well. But unfortunately, it's starting to like sell off a little bit. So let's see what it does after open. Again, levels that I'm looking at when it's this close, like Friday close and all-time highs. When these two levels are really close, I want to see this kind of like break out of all-time highs, right? Like we obviously had a new high in pre-market, but the volume is sort of like low to determine, some strength in that. So, levels that I'll be looking for on the overall market is that, first of all, it has to stay green, right? Yesterday's close was right around here in the 447s. So it has to stay green. And ideally, if it breaks out of all-time highs, then, we got some strength going on, right? So we got to see if it does have any more follow through. Yesterday was a pretty big day, right? Like 3-point move on the market. So let's see what it does. And if it kind of like goes green, then we have some soft supports all around. But I wouldn't bet too high on it. I gotta see some sort of reversal, either like a higher low or some sort of like buying coming back in to hold some support, right? Because we have a pretty big sort of like air gap from 447s down to maybe like 445s potentially, right? So again, levels that I'll be looking for immediately will be this, just to stay green, right? Since it's kind of like getting really close action around there, and break out of all-time highs, right? To see if there's any more upside or any more strength kind of like driving this up. All right, and so this morning, let's look at a couple of small cap gappers, right? Right now, BPTH, really high volume traded already. So key level that I'm looking for, actually, they had some news that talked about like a FDA clearance on some leukemia drugs or something like that, right? So this was the area that I was holding pre-market. So this is sort of like the key level that I'll be looking at today too, 740. If we look at the daily chart, we know that, BPTH has had some back holders from this year, right? Historically, this chart is just a back holder chart, right? Like, we've seen it before, right? But it has made big moves back in 2019 as well, 2018 as well, right? 19, 18 has made some big moves. So we just keep scrolling back, we can see how far diluted this stock has been. Like, so it's like a big back holder type of chart, right? And I think 2019 was the year where it had a reverse split. So it was very small float. And it had like a pretty big move from, single digits almost to 100 in like a couple of days, right? So keep that in mind that there's a lot of bag holders on this chart, right? And that's exactly what happened this year at the beginning of the year, where it ripped up and it left some more bag holders, right? Obviously, those people that have been holding for 2-3 years are trying to get out, right? But obviously, there's still a lot of people that were stuck. So, had a 1-day pop and then just kind of like sold off. So just looking at the daily chart wise, right, 740s, it coincides with a lot of levels on the daily. It's sort of like this Let me zoom in here so you can see it more clearly. Okay, so sort of like right around here, this congestion resistance area, which became some sort of support in pre-market, right? So 740s is going to be the key level that I'm looking at, right? Upside, you're going to have, earlier it was like around $8 that had this resistance. So like around 810 is going to be one right now. This is pre-market area. Above that, you have that 840s, right? And ideally, I'm leaning short bias just because of the back holders, but I'm looking for tens, right? Like something higher than this to start shorting. Because, obviously if there's support right here and I'm shorting $8, 740s, that's 60 cents, right? That's if I get to top tick this and it doesn't go any higher to squeeze me out, right? Because obviously this is going to be 30 cents above some resistance. The reward right here is just not that high, right? Because there's prior resistance could become support. So even if I short here, it might not break down completely, right? It might break down 10, 20 cents. And then, I'm just kind of like getting myself involved in a low reward type of play, which is not what I look for, right? So ideally, if it pops to 10, which is, again, high volume day on this day back in April, right? The highs of this was like around 10.17. So if it does pop right now, it's trading around this 810 area right here, right? So ideally, I'm looking for this to kind of keep pushing and go up to, close to 10 to start a short. And again, keep in mind, this is a low floater. I think it's like 6 million float, right? So this thing could run if it decides to. So obviously, if it breaks out of 10s, then I stop out, right? So just keep that in mind. But I'm trying to use this high volume day here, even though it's not that high. It's only 21 million, and pre-market right now is already traded almost close to 10 million. So hopefully we'll get one initial push to this to start a short, but if it breaks out of this, then I'll stop out, right? So obviously this is another level that we'll be looking at once it crosses that 840s level, right? It has potential to push the 10s. And obviously if it breaks down this support, it has ability to go back down to like 620s, even like 560s, just back down here, right? So I'm not saying it's going to give back 100%, but it is that possibility, right? So we got to just keep our plays tight, right? Like our execution should be as close to levels as possible, whether we're shorting, right? Let's try to get it as close. No need to like jump in early, because obviously, yeah, somebody could have shorted 810 right here, but they've only got like a 30 cents sort of like reward up to this point, right? But what if it would have also ripped up 30 cents, right? So it's like a 1-to-1 type of ratio. Maybe it's not that worth it. Low float, right? Small cap, this thing could, rip really fast as well. We get a lot of volatility on these small caps, so keep that in mind. Again, I'm leaning short bias on this, but only if it pushes to like closer to like that $10 level, right? So just be cautious. Again, reminder, low float, right? Back holder chart. So it could squeeze. Keep that in mind. All right. So that's BPTH. And I'm looking at CARA, right? CARA also had some FDA approval. News that came out yesterday after hours, right? So we saw this gap up, but it didn't really get much action after that initial push, right? Gaps up, right? Traded for, I don't know, a couple minutes, and it paused for, let me see here. Yeah, like 16, 14. Yeah, so around like after hours, but I think the news came out like, an hour before this move, right? And it wasn't really getting much action. Nonetheless, it gapped up after hours from, we look at the daily chart. It's just been trading kind of like sideways for a long time, right? So, and then it gapped up, right? It has this huge sort of like gap to fill, right? So from up here in the 25s all the way down to like 16s. Yeah, you have some levels in between, but this gap up definitely is going to leave a lot of people underwater, right? People that were up here holding, and this huge gap up has not seen any bounces up yet, right? So again, I think any bounces to major levels are probably going to get sold into. I don't think it's going to fill the entire gap today. It is a thicker float stock, has higher institutional ownership. So yeah, I don't foresee this go back all the way to like 25s, right, to fill the entire gap. So we might get some resistance. So I am leaning slightly bearish on this, but only on bigger pushes, right? So yeah, so the gap up yesterday, key level, how I decided this one was, gaps up, kind of had some consolidation, try to push up again, found some support, right? So right immediately when I was making this plan this morning, right around this time, I was hoping that this level would hold. Right now, it's still trading around there. So 1750 would be the key level, right? Right now, it's just kind of like hovering around there. If it's able to reclaim and hold some support, then maybe we got some play, right? So immediately above that, we have, some resistance right here around the 1830s, right? Again, another pre-market this morning gaps up as a support right here. acted as resistance right around this area. So 1830s will be sort of like a potential resistance. You have your pre-market highs, 1910s area, and this can even go to like 20s, right? But yeah, I wouldn't foresee this kind of like pushing up to 25s, but maybe if it pushes to 20s, be a little bit beyond that, I might, look to see if it's some kind of like stall or, just lack of follow through on the buy side. Maybe that would be a decent short. But again, higher IO, I might leave this on this one alone, like sort of like on the back burner. I'd rather trade something that's might be more fluid to it, but let's see what it does after open, right? And below that, you're going to get like 1670s as your support, right? Sort of like after our high, 1675s. 1618 was sort of like a line in the sand for me, okay? Like I think on the daily chart, if we're looking at this level, this is that gap down resistance, right? Like once it gap down, this became a resistance. So I think if it goes back below this level, right? If the stock kind of like trades up here and it kind of like goes back here, this could be a very strong resistance if it breaks down again, right? Because obviously it should be acting as like a strong support, but once it breaks back down, if it doesn't have enough buyers, it might act as a pretty strong resistance. So it could be this is sort of like the line in the sand for me, the 1618 area, so 1620, somewhere around there. If it's unable to reclaim that after it breaks down, then you have room to potentially go back down to like 15s or and so forth, right? Again, leading slightly bearish on this. It hasn't seen much action, not a lot of volume in pre-market yet. So let's see if it's able to hold to key level, and we'll see. We'll kind of like determine it from there. But we at least know our plans, right? So we know what levels to look out for. So that's what all this pre-planning is for, and you guys can do it on all the stocks that you guys watch as well, right? So right now it's just kind of like trading sideways a little bit, but still hovering around the key level. So let's see what it does, right? I would like to see a little bit more volume on this. Right, so those are the two sort of like small caps, and a couple of large caps that I am very interested in this morning. It's going to be, NVIDIA for follow through, right? So obviously, again, all-time highs on this one. These are just fibs that I drew, right? So yeah, same thing as a SPY, right? What it did was kind of like trading choppy a little bit, and then it got bought up on the day. And this day was kind of insane in the sense that it made highs and it also made extreme lows, right? And then from there, it kind of just became more of like a momentum to the upside. The volume started picking up really, really drastically, right? So we have high volume, and we got to keep in mind this is a $200 stock, right? For a $200 stock to be trading, 76 million volume, 67 million volume, that's significant, right? So we know that there's a lot of interest in this stock that's been buying it up. So again, what am I looking for this morning? I'm looking for follow through, obviously. Highs of yesterday. Okay. When I was planning this, it was, still lingering around this 220 to 219s area, right around here, right? So, so I actually had my key level on this as around like this 220 area. Right? I wanted it to kind of hold here to get more follow through. I know this was a good swing. I mean, for those that swung it with Shay, definitely if you would have sold in pre-market, it was like a $3 gain, right? So if you're holding it to see if it goes to the moon, again, once you see it start breaking down, you just have to either protect yourself from the trade, right? Kind of like break even, or look for, there's no shame in breaking even, right? And then looking for a re-entry, right? Just because the play didn't work out the first time doesn't mean that there won't be another opportunity, right? So, but if you're holding it and you're letting it go against you under, making your trade red, then that might be an issue we have to revisit to improve our trade management skills, okay? But I was hoping that this will hold around this 220s area, right? Again, on all these large caps, if they break out of prior day highs, it signifies something, right? That there's a lot of interest still in this stock, right? So I was hoping that it would hold around this area, and have like a breakout and hold of obviously this area for more continuation, right? So because this one has obviously been just trending up all day yesterday, right? Once it broke out, made a low, broke out again, made a higher low. So it took some time, but we can draw a trend line here. We could say it never really broke that trend line to signal any potential downside, right? So I was hoping that it would continue, obviously, but right now in pre-market, obviously it broke down below. So it might open with a small gap down now, right? So it kind of changes things a little bit, right? Still, I'm looking at this key level of this 220s areas to either reclaim or hold for more upside. If it comes up here and then rejects it, then we might see maybe like a small sell-off, right? Because the stock has been going up for 3 days straight, right? It's been positive for 3 days straight. So it's going to need some time to kind of reset itself, take a breather, right? So we might see some selling, some profit taking today, but the stock has made all-time highs again, right? So 220s upside you're gonna have from the FIPS, obviously, 221s, 222s right around this level. Above that, you're gonna have 225s, but I think it might hit 223s, 224s before kind of like making its move up there. But right now it's kind of just the fact that it's sold off, it might not even make it up to those levels, right? So we got to see. We got to see if this is able to reclaim first and see how it sets up. So again, this one, if I was doing a joint trend type of play, I was going to wait, 5-10 minutes after the market opens to see how this sets up and then kind of like jump in. I wouldn't be too aggressive in a sense. All right. So below this, obviously, support levels was going to be around 218, right around here, right? Like 218, 217, like high 217, 218, some support, right? So that's why we're seeing some pause here right now, because there was some support right here from prior day. And then we have another fib level, which is sort of right around here, 216.70s-ish, which was a resistance, and it's kind of just never tested that area again. So we got another potential level here, right? And obviously some other levels right around this 213, 214s area. So we can technically use a lot of yesterday's sort of like higher lows as support too. And then, but again, keep in mind that once those levels starts getting breached and broken, then you don't want to keep holding on to your long, right? It's okay to stop out, right? When you're playing a trend join type of play, if it goes against your trend, it's okay to take that loser and then look for revisit area and re-entries, right? So that's NVIDIA. I was hoping that it would kind of like hold up here, but ever since I started this, it's kind of like just been breaking down a little bit. So let's see what it does after open. Give it 5-10 minutes. That's my thoughts right now. Game plans do change. Same thing with Tesla, right? We saw a big sort of like upside move on a lot of EV sectors yesterday, right? So there's definitely some momentum behind it right now. I think Elon had like a couple events as well, talks about the Tesla bot, and there's just a lot of news around the Tesla, right? So there's not like one specific news, but just a bunch of small news kind of like moving the stock in essence. With I think boom in the semiconductors, right? The EVs, a lot of these tech companies as well, like with NASDAQ making new highs, right? The Qs, SPY making new highs, everything. It's sort of like on this upward momentum, right? So we've had sort of like a very bearish market the last, I guess, week or so, right? Before this, and things are signaling sort of like a reversal. So that's why we're seeing some sort of upside momentum. So yesterday was a bullish day. Like first, in my opinion, was the first sort of like real bullish day in a while. So I'm looking for more continuation on that, right? We've had similar signals like this, obviously. So again, I'm just being extra careful in a sense that we've had bullish days where a signal is going to go bullish, right? Like on this day where it got bought up and closed near highs, all-time highs, but market gap down massive in a sense where it just kind of like started turning, right? So just as we're getting signals of bullishness, it kind of like turns back. So I'm also worried about, I'm aware of that, right? Like I'm aware of potential reversals as well, but I'm looking for more upside continuation. If it gives it to me, great, right? Then my my thesis on these plays are going to be bullish. But if I do see some sort of like reversal type moves, right, then I'm also aware of what I need to change on my plans, right? So just being aware of that is going to be very helpful. Tesla, right? So obviously we had a pretty decent move yesterday right here. Very, very strong, never came back down. I mean, micro dips, small dips for you to get in, but again, it's sort of like riskier, like right here. If you get in at 694s, you next level support would have been Friday highs like 2.5 points away, right? And if it does not hold that level, your VWAP is like 4 or 5 points away, right? And if that one doesn't hold, it's like pretty big air gap, right? So it's like harder to kind of join trends on these smaller micro pulls, right? But nonetheless, it was very, very bullish. I think it's, I'm looking for hopefully more continuation. Again, when I was making this plan in pre-market, a lot of stocks were still holding up and, just all of a sudden started kind of like gapping down a lot, right? So let's see what the SPY is doing. SPY is still holding, right? So Tesla, key levels that I was looking for, right around this prior day support area, right? As we can see, it was a resistance, broke out of that, became a support, tested, held like 3 times, and then it broke down, right? And then kind of like tested as resistance, but now after hours kind of like gapped up over that, right? So right around here, the 707s area would be key area of interest, and it's kind of like trading around there too. 707, 706, right? Yesterday's close, so you can say like this general area is of interest, right? Like just basically 707, 706. Let's see if it holds, right? Obviously, if it holds and kind of like you can see some buying volume come in and it pushes the stock up, then we might get some breakouts and stuff, right? So above that, you're gonna have your Friday high 710, 712, right? 712s. 720s is a level. I think 720s is a level on daily. 730s, right? Let's see if it's able to make that. If it's unable to hold this, this has potential to go back down to like 700, right? And even like 680s, right? So 700, 670s, 680s. We have seen times where these big EV moves on Tesla does kind of like make one big day move and the next day kind of like sells back down too, right? So we just got to be, again, cognizant of what happens with the market overall. So I'll be watching the SPY pretty closely today when I'm trading these larger cap names, okay? So that covers the main watches for me.